Hello and welcome to my channel. My name's Charles Lastic and this channel is Developing Extraordinary. It's all about how to grow your mind, grow your business and grow your wealth. So today's video is in the wealth arena and it's how to manage your cash flow to grow your wealth. I've been a regulated independent financial advisor for more than 26 years and seen hundreds of clients, and almost everybody who's developed this particular system with me has improved their wealth, and certainly everybody has improved their peace of mind by knowing what's happening with their finances and which way they're going. So a really useful video, I think. So without further ado, let's cue the intro. Hi and welcome back, and as I said, today's video is about how to manage your cash flow to grow your wealth. So it's practical in terms of how you actually set up your bank accounts and your wealth management to enable you to build your wealth in a sensible and structured manner. Okay, so the first point, tax. So tax is a cost, right? The more you can mitigate your tax, the more money you have. I'm not saying you're going to be illegal about it, I'm just saying you're going to look at your allowances and make sure that you are mitigating your tax as much as possible. Now, if you're paying a lot of tax, then it might not hurt to at least seek advice from a financial planner or an accountant to make sure you're mitigating that as much as possible. So the next area that has a massive impact upon your wealth is your expenditure. So expenditure really is obviously your lifestyle. It's everything you spend money on. Now, most people spend their money on liabilities. What's a liability? So hats off here to Robert Kiyosaki. Read the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, excellent, and there's videos that he does around this area. But really a liability is anything that takes money out of your pocket. So bizarrely enough, the house you live in takes money out of your pocket. The car you drive, holidays, things you buy generally take money out of your pocket, and usually as a result they're liabilities. Okay, so the main thing with expenditure is recording all of your expenditure and setting up a system. So there's plenty of apps out there these days. You need a budget online, different things that will enable you to record and control your expenditure. So that's important to get a handle on it and know where it is going. Okay, so once you've got control of your expenditure, or a system at least to deal with it, the next thing you need to be doing is considering buying assets. So what are assets? So assets, as opposed to liabilities, effectively put money into your pocket. So they're things like rental property, so not the house you live in, but property you rent out, investments, stocks and shares, equities, businesses, if you own a number of businesses, they hopefully bring you in income, royalties. So lots of different types of investments, and you could even say a YouTube channel would be an asset to put money into your pocket. So different types of assets put money into your pocket, and you need to utilize your cash flow to put money into as much assets as possible, because eventually if they're putting money into your pocket, they will then produce you an income stream to then stop you having to work, and therefore you can retire once those assets are big enough to produce an income stream that's big enough. Okay, so how do we then move our cash towards managing it and then giving ourselves more money to invest into buying assets? So the first thing you do is you manage the system of having cash to assets, and you do that by having 4 cash buckets and 3 investment buckets. So let's go into those different buckets and what they are and how they work. So the 4 cash buckets. Firstly, it's a discretionary account. So this is where you give each other, so if you're a couple, you put an amount of money into that on a monthly basis and you spend it as you wish. So I get a certain amount, my wife gets a certain amount. If I go out for a drink with the boys, that's not recorded. If I go out for a meal, if I buy something from that account, it's not recorded. It's just the amount that goes in there every month is recorded, and it doesn't even need to be equal. My wife can have a bigger amount than I have because getting her done and her makeup and her clothes probably cost more than mine. So that's the first bucket, which is a discretionary bucket. Okay, the second bucket is an annual budget. So this is for redecorating the house, for holidays, for car repairs. So you've got a consistent sum of money that's in there to enable you to meet those ongoing needs. So the third is an emergency fund. So in an ideal world, you want something in the region of 3 to 6 months salary. Better still, if you've looked at your expenditure to some degree, it's the minimum amount you need to live on for at least 6 months. If you cut everything back, how much would you need every month? And you should have at least 6 months worth of that in the bank as an emergency fund in case you lose your job or something goes badly wrong with the business. Okay, so that's an emergency fund. Lastly, you need another bucket, which is short-term savings. So that's for things like maybe replacing your car, getting something big done in the house. And usually you can invest in cash bonds, which pay a higher level of interest because you lock in the money and you say, I'm not going to take it out for at least a year. So it's not instant access money, it's giving you a higher rate of interest. And that's like in the UK, cash ISAs, things like that. So those are your 4 cash buckets. Then now let's get on to the investment buckets. So as I said, you've got 3 investment buckets. Now bear in mind your cash bucket should take any needs for at least a year. Therefore these are more investment type buckets for the longer term. So in the UK you'd be investing in things like tax-free ISAs, and I think in the US they're called IRAs or something, but it's a tax-free investment that grows over time. And the money for this is for things like your kids' education. It's something that you can get the money back and it's relatively liquid within 1 or 2 weeks. So it's there and you're building for the medium term as opposed to the other 2 buckets which are much longer term. So the next bucket would be pensions for most people, and this is investments into a pension because they're tax advantageous and allow you to grow money for your long term. Now this is where understanding your expenditure makes sense, because if you can see how much money you're spending on a yearly basis now, you can then estimate to a reasonably good level how much money you're going to need in the future, and therefore how much you need in a pension or other assets to give you a solid stream of income. So the last bucket, it's still also long-term assets, but it's in different things. Maybe you invest in stocks and shares instead of just pensions, so to diversify. And really you can afford with this to probably take a higher level of risk, and this is more for your aspirational needs rather than for your core living. So your core living should be taken up with your ISAs and pensions, but then as you start to get more for aspirational levels of wealth for retirement, this is in stocks and shares, rental property, other types of investments, as we've said before. So that's the third investment bucket. Okay, to help you understand how that all fits together, I'm going to draw it up on the whiteboard and show you how the buckets fit together and how it makes sense to work in a practical world. Okay, so up here I'm going to explain how all of these buckets fit together and how you manage it in the real world. So let's get started in. So basically you've got an income 1 and an income 2, and that income then goes to a joint bank account. And that joint bank account, you record all the incomings and outgoings. So if you've got more than one income, let's say some of your assets are producing you an income, it all goes into that one point and you record that absolutely properly. Now some people also set up a separate, but I'd still call that the same bucket effectively, a standing order account, where they just make one standing order from that account to that account, and this pays things like the mortgage, the gas bill, the electricity, the phone, things that are regular every single month. Okay, so now if we look at the 4 cash buckets here, as I explained, the one joint account here, then these discretionary accounts are probably sole accounts, husband, wife for instance, or 2 partners. I call that bucket 2 because it's the same. Obviously if there's only you only have 1 discretionary account. And as I said, you could say one person has 300 a month and one person has 400 a month. It's entirely up to you to determine what that is, but that isn't recorded, and that's the point, because it enables people, husbands and wives for instance, or partners, to have privacy on some of the things they spend money on without having to answer to their nearest and dearest, if that makes sense, right? So that's the reason for the discretionary account. Now the annual budget account, as I said, really the money's going from there to there, and that's feeding getting the cars repaired, holidays, that kind of thing. Lastly, the emergency fund, as I said, about 6 months expenditure is what you need to build it up to. But the main point is all 4 of those are cash buckets and they're held in cash. Now, for the investment buckets, we've got 3 buckets: investment bucket 1, investment 2 and investment 3. And as you can see, you would send up standing orders. Now really, you may well fill that and that at the same time, right, because of the advantages of pensions in terms of tax. So really that's up to you and your financial planner as to how you deal with that. But really these are things like ISAs, as I've said, and these are things like long-term pensions, but these are fully tax-free and these have tax advantages. Over here you've got properties, royalties, any other investments over time that you can afford to take a higher risk with to enable you to get your lifestyle. But very simply, the money comes in here, it goes to that joint account. From that one account, which is the only thing you then need to record, is the money going into those, gets fed into that account, gets fed into that account, goes into a separate standing order account, which then feeds the building of wealth over time. So really that is a practical methodology of controlling your cash flow to build your wealth. And by recording everything, you're able to see where everything goes and then keep much more control of it to make sure it's going where you want it to go, and that you are building your investment buckets at time to give you financial freedom or retire early, whichever it is that you want. So that's today's video on cash flow control to grow your wealth. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did and you found it useful, give us a like down below. If you want to, subscribe to our channel, and there's a lot more of this stuff to come. Like and subscribe, and also follow us on Instagram. And thanks for watching. Bye for now. Thanks. Bye for now.